Hey, what's up, guys? This is Favi from Tectonic Takes. Just giving you a quick reminder. This is Baby Leo, too. Quick reminder to like our video, please. It helps out the algorithm to make sure that other Quakes fans see our content as well. And don't forget to subscribe. Maybe press that bell icon as well. Take care, and
hello, welcome back to Tectonic Takes podcast. I'm one of your co-hosts, Ivan Ornelas. We are a little over a month away from the start of the 2021 Major League Soccer season, scheduled to start on April 17th. And I'm with Dan Burkhead. Dan, how are you doing?
Doing well, thank you. Yep, excited for this season. Like normally we'd be watching games at this point of the year, so but countdown's on, which is good news.
We are watching games, just Champions League and European leagues, Liga MX, hockey, college basketball, NBA, and so on and so forth. Even
we got
FBS football or SCS, whichever one's not Alabama and Clemson.
Right. Yeah. Right.
So everything except MLS, baseball, and football. So we're MLS is they're taking their time, and rightfully so. You can't rush perfection, and MLS's imperfections are perfections in a way.
That's putting it diplomatically.
Yeah. So, you got a lot going on with your real life as well as your San Jose Earthquakes content. Tell us a little bit about what's coming up for you.
So, it's been an interesting off season. I kind of gave a rundown of the off season moves and what to expect, and
Quakes off season moves or MLS wide?
No, just the Quakes.
Okay, just make sure.
Yeah, Quakes with their moves, because they really solidified a Matias Almeida, experienced roster with additions that they've made. So it should be an interesting season this year because Matias Almeida is going to have a lot of players that played with him either last year or at other teams. So, and then probably get the fan polls going and get ready for the regular season. All
right. Yeah, that's exciting. And if it was all the moves in Major League Soccer with all the different transfers and rules we had, that would probably be way too much. So within San Jose Earthquakes, you have a little bit more to cover than you do some other seasons. So, but it's a manageable amount still. So like we did with our previous guests, we've been going around the different corners of the San Jose Earthquakes community and asking a series of questions about where each person stands as we get started on this regular season. Most of the questions will be San Jose Earthquakes focused, but of course you can't tell the story of one team without telling the story of the other now 26 teams, now that Austin is part of the league. And so naturally...
Yeah, and the whole Sacramento... Yeah, that Sacramento shakeup is I think that's going to affect San Jose in a lot of different ways personally. So I think we should keep an eye out on that situation too.
Right. I've mentioned a couple times on this podcast that I went to college at UC Davis, so I went to a handful of Sacramento Republic games, mostly regular season, but I also went to one postseason game and a U.S. Open Cup game where they beat Real Salt Lake. So it's so much fun. It was over where they had the Sacramento County Fairgrounds. Is a great stadium, and it's an incredible fan base, and they deserve an MLS team, and it sucks that their status is put into question. But one thing that isn't in question is that San Jose Earthquakes have their work cut out for them this season, and we're going to get right into it. This podcast is always sponsored by Roughneck Scarves. And the first question I have to ask you is, does this team on paper feel like it has more, less, or the same amount of talent as it did in 2020, starting in 2020?
I would say, it probably has more. I think we had a lot of hits and misses in previous years with our signings, but I think with the the new signings coming in. I think Matias Almeida really knows his roster and his personnel, so there's not as much guessing in terms of if a player is going to be able to do well or not. So I'd say we're stronger coming into this season. That being said, it's going to be a totally different season than 2020, right? Where we had like that whole 2-month layoff or whatever it was, and then a very condensed regular season. So it's going to be a little bit more difficult to judge this season as compared to last season, but I think we're coming in stronger this season.
Right, and I think while that may be the case that we are coming in stronger, I think there's an element of San Jose Earthquakes won't be able to sneak up on teams as they have in the past, and as they did in the MLS's back tournament, they were able to. Granted, their wins were against the likes of Vancouver Whitecaps, Chicago Fire, Real Salt Lake, teams that you would expect a San Jose Earthquakes team that is competitive in MLS to be able to beat more often than not. But still, to get to the quarterfinals and to get further than several more fancy teams that got knocked out earlier, that was an important step, and it eventually translated into success when the season resumed, even though it didn't look like that at first.
Right, yeah. I think one of the key changes from last year was obviously JT Marcinkowski. And if he's going to be, between the posts, it looks like he's got the number 1 jersey now. So
yeah,
there's no reason to think, there's no reason to think that he's not going to be starting. And if he's anchoring that defense, I think the Quakes probably could have a very solid defensive line. So I think that's going to be our strength for 2021 is our defense being able, because we've seen what Yutskin can do with his abilities as a defensive mid. He's probably one of the best defensive mids defensively in the league. Offensive, maybe not so much, but I do think, we do have the components to give teams a challenge to be able to score goals on us. And that's probably going to be what propels us to more wins this year.
Right. So in our previous preseason previews where we asked people to give their starting lineup. We've done a couple of these now, so they're starting to blend in. I'll just list what I think the lineup would be in the first game of the season, and you can tell me if you agree or disagree with any of the positions. So we got JT Marcinkowski in goal. We got Abakasis, the new signing in right back. We got a center back partnership of Alanis and Youngworth. We've got left back spot Marcos Lopez. And then the holding midfielders will be Jackson, Yule, and Utzon, with a front four of Chofis, of Espinoza, Fierro, and Rios, with Wondolowski likely starting the season off the bench as he did last time. Do you agree or disagree?
I agree with all of that. Marcinkowski, Remedy, and Yule. Obviously, we got Olympics to worry about, and if we're going to be using Yule and Marcinkowski, they're not going to be, but I would guess they're going to be stalwarts when they're available. And I think Wando's going to be the new number 12, that super sub.
Right.
And, coming in and scoring goals as he needs to. Although, he did win the beep test. So he's definitely got the legs probably to last the season. So.
Right. I think the way that Wondolowski was one of the biggest beneficiaries of the disjointed structure of last season. Granted, down the stretch, the game started coming thick and fast, and maybe you were starting to worry about not just him, but a lot of the older players throughout MLS in general, how they were able to keep up. The jury's out if Zlatan was still in the league. How would he have done? Some would say he's an Iron Man. Some would say he's 45 years old and he would break down. But I think that Wondolowski, he's not necessarily like defying age at a level like LeBron James, but like he's for the level of MLS, I feel like he rarely gets tired based on what I've seen. And I think he's just an energetic personality, and he knows how to be an efficient leader in many different ways. And those intangibles are so important. And granted, some of that can be transferred with him on the sidelines, like maybe a secondary assistant coach or something, helping teammates during halftime or as they're getting subbed on themselves. But when he's out there, he still has a lot of value to this team. And I think there's a good chance that he can play his way into a starting role whether it be for a few games if Rios gets hurt or has the goal scoring drought, or for the remainder of the season if needed. Depends.
Yeah, I think. Well, and Wando has unfinished business too, so I think he is. He wants to make the playoffs. He wants to win a cup. He's made that very vocal. So being able to have him, drive this team, I think he's going to be a leader by example this year. And his work ethic was there right at the beginning of the season when we started. So I'm excited. I think Wando, if I had to give him an over/under on total goals this season, I'd say he's back in the double digits again this year.
Yeah, that would be pretty
even
cool.
Even though he might be coming off the bench, I still think that he's still got the magic touch until he proves otherwise.
Yeah, and I think that's just the way MLS teams are set up. Most teams in MLS are top heavy. They have at least 2 or 3 goal-getting options off the bench. You could, if you look at the Portland Timbers, for example, any of their offensive-minded players could grab a goal off the bench. It's just the way the league is right now. So I think you can't rule out someone who will play 30-something games, even if they won't always be from the starting position, that they can make an impact.
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
So which parts of the roster, if any, do you think still need improvements?
I don't know. I feel like, Flo has lost a step, and we all love Flo. But having, and he was, I'm going to say, our best center back for the previous 2 or 3 seasons. I'm guessing he's going to be starting this season as a center back. And I think that could be, if he has a down year, that could be an area where, we might wish we had a little bit more depth at that position for someone to be able to take over.
There's an experience drop-off, I think, behind the 2 starting center backs of Alanis and Youngworth. We saw Tanner Beeson. He had to be involved a lot down the stretch of the season, and we had mixed results. A lot of people seem confident that Tanner Beeson could be that next man up. Other people think that it's going to be tough for him to make that transition. I think that he's definitely going to be playing some games. He appears to be the 3rd choice center back of the players we have, because the other options are Jacob Akanyarije and Casey Walls, if I'm not mistaken. If there's anyone else I'm forgetting.
And unless you want to drop like Judson back from that defensive mid to like a center back, but I don't think they would do that. Although it worked for Flo, so.
Right, that's what they did initially. He came into
he came in as that defensive mid, and flourished.
That's what he played the majority of his career in Europe. So. So definitely that's something to worry. I think the starting 11, if you could play them all 34 games in an ideal world, then you'll have a good chance of making the playoffs, and you'll have a good chance of beating most teams in the league. You won't win every game. You won't win against some of the better teams too often, but you'll be in the middle of the road. And that's the thing. It's not an ideal world, especially not right now. We're still in the middle of a pandemic. As much as things are opening up, we're getting fans in the stadiums this season. We're still recovering from that, and there's going to be players missing for a variety of reasons. In the NBA, for example, we've been missing players for COVID reasons, non-COVID reasons, all sorts of injuries. Anything in a biology book has been broken. Personal reasons, deaths of family members, it's been tough. So I think, and Thierry Henry, even, he left MLS because he hadn't seen his family in like a year. So it does take a toll on people. So I don't think there's going to be a single starter. Okay, there probably will be. I say maybe less than 15 players will play every minute of this season in MLS.
Oh, for sure. Yeah. I think,
so. So you have to be prepared for at least, say, 25 players, which is usually a normal roster size in any soccer league, to have to come in at some point. And in that statement, I'll also specify field players. A lot of goalkeepers will play every minute.
Right. Yeah. Oh well. Yeah. I would expect JT every time he's available, he's on the pitch. So
Yeah.
that's my.
That's another question, though. So you mentioned JT Marcinkowski and Jackson Ewell. They're in that Olympic qualifying rosters. So our goalkeeping options for this season behind him, we still have Matt Bersano, which was a
I
bit of a
like Matt
surprise for me
Bersano.
because I thought, if they're going to make a move, he would be someone that they would probably have to offload because they still want to see what they have with Emi Ochoa. He's still a young product, and based on some of the higher profile blunders he had or losses that he's been a part of, it would be tough to sell, not literally sell Daniel Vega, but sell him to another team. It's like, hey, we can trade you Daniel Vega for this guy or something. But yeah.
I don't see another team going after Daniel Vega at all.
Right. So do you think Matt Bersano could possibly be the number 2 ahead of Vega?
I don't think so. I think Vega is still going to be that number 2 goalie just because
maybe
he
wishful
has
thinking.
more experience. Yeah, he's got more MLS experience than Matt Bersano does.
And that experience does count for something, even if you haven't been a great player for a while. I think of someone like Joe Hart in the Premier League. The reason why he still is in the Premier League, even though he hasn't been good enough to start for a Premier League team in a while, is because he does have that experience to help either the goalkeeper that's ahead of him in the pecking order or the younger goalkeepers behind him get to that next level. So
right.
a similar way, like Daniel Vega does have some value to this team, as much as fans they've made Daniel Vega and Andy Rios to a meme. Some of that is deserved. Some of it might be a little too harsh. It depends on who you ask. But I think San Jose Earthquakes are in a position where, especially in the field players, but even in the goalkeepers, at least the top 2 guys, like, you can't overlook any options.
You're right. Yeah, I couldn't imagine. I mean, Vegas got the experience, right? And he's played with these players before. So yeah, I'd say, JT, our season really turned around when JT Marcinkowski was the new starter, and he really did propel us into the playoffs. We were at the bottom of the table for a while. But yeah, I think Vega is always going to be that number 2 option unless he gets injured or something like that. So
right.
Yeah.
So speaking of San Jose Earthquakes bouncing back down the end of the season, what player do you think will have the biggest bounce back season? Someone who maybe they did okay, but we expect them to be exceptional, or they struggled at times where we needed them to not?
Okay, so I'm going to name 2 players here.
Okay.
Eric Remedy, who was our traded from Atlanta. He had an off year last year.
The whole team did.
Yeah, the whole team did, really. And he saw his minutes really decline, and his position in the starting 11 was jeopardized. And there's a lot of rotation and things like that. So I really see Eric Remedy coming into San Jose and earning that spot in the starting 11 and actually having a really, really good season this year. I also think Carlos Fierro is a guy who's been a little bit underrated because we've put so much emphasis on Christian Espinoza and what he was doing in terms of creating chances and all his assists. But I think Fierro is one of those guys that could easily, rack up 8 or 9 assists this season too. So I could see him having a really good season, especially with, you got a Wando or you got a Andy Rios up there that can find that space. So it's just a matter of finding it. So, and if Espinoza's on the radar now, so,
right.
People are not going to be looking at Fierro when they're preparing for the San Jose Earthquakes. This is probably another reason why they'll probably have a lot of opportunities to shine.
Yeah, Christian Espinoza, sometimes you got to remind yourself he landed pretty high in the assist charts in MLS last season. So whenever you do that, next season, can you keep it up? Defenders are going to play you tighter. Maybe they're going to foul you more. So you got to be prepared for that. And he's a player I'm excited to watch this season because he is our most creative and influential player. Is there any particular player you're most excited about?
So I'm going to call Cade Cowell as my player to watch this season. I think
Right.
he's entering the prime of his soccer career. He is a very good player for being such a young player. And I think he is poised to have a breakout season, if I could make that prediction. I don't know if he's going to get double-digit goals, but I definitely think he's going to be close to double-digit goals if Andy Rios's production isn't up to Matias Almeida's standards, or if Wando is just getting a little old. I could see Cade Cowell maybe shouldering that number 12 position as that super sub coming in when the team needs goals, if that ever were to happen, kind of like the Alan Gordon. And then who knows, if he starts scoring goals when he's coming in as a sub, you might see him as a starter going into the latter half of the season.
Yeah, I'm of one of two minds, because on one hand, I believe that behind Wondolowski, should he not start, Cade Cowell should definitely be the second guy off the bench. But on the other hand, I can't have it both ways, where Cade Cowell plays almost every game off the bench, but then you have to get some playing time to Siad Haji, to Fuentes, Calvillo. And these are all players that I want to be a part of the future San Jose Earthquakes. But being a part of that future means being involved in bits and pieces right now. And, you only get 3 subs as far as we know. Like last year, it was different because of COVID regulations. So we had the 5 subs through MLS's back tournament and then all further MLS activity. So we're working our way back to that. And I think Almeida will probably have to sacrifice some of his subs when he's not doing full-scale rotations and like those heavy-hitting weeks with 3 games in them. So I think
I think our midfield is probably the most stacked, which is why it's going to be hard for like an Eric Calvillo, Siad Haji, those players to get a crack, because you also have Tommy Thompson, you have Shea Salinas, and then you have the guys that we probably predicted to start with Chofis and Espinoza and Fierro. So
of the top
Remedy.
4 like options off the bench, if we go with the starters we named earlier in this podcast, you have 4 serviceable players in Chris Wondolowski, Shea Salinas, Cade Cowell, and Tommy Thompson, but only 3 subs. So it's a good problem to have. Granted, it's not like, I'm not saying that this roster is like an MLS Cup like full-on contender, but this is a better San Jose Earthquakes team than I feel like we've had in a couple seasons. It could be definitely better than the one that made the playoffs before this one, because we put up a hell of a fight against Sporting Kansas City, whereas the one before got demolished by Vancouver.
I think in terms of depth, I think we're okay. That forward position, who's going to score the goals? We never did have that, signing that I think a lot of fans were expecting. That we're going to bring in this goal scorer. So we're Wando's getting older. Rios, I don't know if he is that guy. Can he be that guy? I haven't seen it yet, but there's a possibility. I don't want to discount his season too soon.
Do you think that the Quakes will make another signing at some point during the season, or do you think that the roster we're starting with is going to be 99% the roster we're going to end with, whether it be we miss the playoffs or we get knocked out in the playoffs or somehow we make it to the final?
I believe that we will make some type of midseason signing, because we've always made some type of midseason adjustment. As Jesse Fiorinelli, he has his fingers on the pulse of the team, and he's always bringing in players to try and help with that playoff push. So I would be surprised if we don't sign some type of striker or player that can potentially, because I really feel forward is probably where our gaps in our roster are. Midfield, I don't think so. I think we have a pretty good defensive line. The depth might not be there, but I think our starters are going to be just fine with Flo and Alanis and things like that. But the forward position in the goal scoring, that's the area where I think we're going to probably see a signing mid-season.
Right. And I think the answer should be yes, but with the San Jose Earthquakes, you never know. I think that's the standard in MLS, because the teams that aren't in the playoff race, you want to make a signing to get you in that conversation. The teams that are in the playoff spots, you want to make a roster or two to help get you towards those last few weeks and maybe rest some players. And the teams that are, the cup contenders, they want to add one more person as like an insurance policy.
Yeah.
So there's always a reason to make a midseason signing, whether you're at the top or bottom of the conference. Where do you think Earthquakes will land in the standings, though?
I think we're a playoff team right now. I don't know if we're, a supporter shield winner, or, I think we could make a run at U.S. Open Cup because we do have a lot of depth, and there's traditionally you usually use a lot of the players that don't get a lot of pitch time during the regular season in those tournament games, and so I think we're going to see, Tommy Thompson, Shea Salinas starting in those U.S. Open Cup games, so we might be able to make a run at that. I definitely don't think we're a MLS Cup contender, but I do think we could make a strong run in the playoffs. But I would predict that the Earthquakes are probably going to finish, I'm going to say fifth in the West.
Fifth in the West. Who do you think are the four teams that finish above?
So I'm gonna predict Minnesota is going to be my sleeper team for the West. Okay. Yeah, because Minnesota, they're I want to say a very underrated team. I think they're a dangerous team, if I could call them dangerous. And I think they came close last season, and they had a very strong regular season, but they kind of ran out of gas towards the end. But I'd say Minnesota is going to finish probably near the top. I think Sporting Kansas City, obviously. Peter Vermees, he knows how to win. He knows how to make rosters. He knows how to get the most out of his players. They're always a contender. I would see them finishing near the top. I would see probably LAFC is going to be, in that top three as well.
Although they did slip last season.
They did, yeah. Mm-hmm. So, but yeah, I think Minnesota's going to be. I think they're going to be. If I had to pick a top three, not necessarily in this order, I would say LAFC, Sporting Kansas City, and Minnesota are going to be my picks to finish in the top three this season.
Okay, so I'm not quite as hopeful. I think San Jose Earthquakes, it could be anywhere from like 6th to 8th for me, and that's best case scenario. If bad luck starts to pile up and the teams that did get stronger or are joining the league for the first time, like Austin, are really legit threats, then that could push us further down. Minnesota is definitely a team I keep an eye on. Minnesota and Sporting Kansas City, they're teams that they don't have the traditional star power in terms of like historically in MLS, but they're efficient and they're deep teams. And then you have to deal with Portland Timbers and Seattle Sounders. Colorado Rapids is an X factor. And then the LA teams, who knows what you're going to get from them. So it's going to be challenging. But I think if it is 7 from each conference this season, then I think San Jose Earthquakes might have to, settle for 7th or 6th if they can get there.
Yeah. I'm going to predict, if I can make another bold prediction, I'm going to predict
certainly.
Seattle.
What's your tectonic take of the season?
Yeah.
That was
I'm going to say Seattle Sounders do not make the playoffs this season.
For the first time ever.
Yeah,
wow.
Jordan Morris. Yeah, Jordan Morris is he's out for the Swans, and I don't think he's going to be very effective.
It'll take a long time for him to get back to 100%.
Yeah, and I think that was a huge component that they're missing in that team. Plus, I think they're a little bit. They were already a little bit on the decline. They won the cup a few years ago, and then I think when the team is on the decline and then you have a hit like Jordan Morris, it could really affect that team. So that's going to be my big prediction is the Sounders do not make the playoffs this year. Right.
I feel like, Jordan Morris is a big loss for them. And I think similarly to the San Jose Earthquakes, there is a bit of a lack of depth in striker because behind Raul Ruidiaz, are you going to have Will Bruin be your next best guy? Who knows? But I think Seattle Sounders, they always seem to find a way. So it's one of those things where, like, until the San Antonio Spurs finally didn't make the playoffs, I would never bet against them making the playoffs. And the same thing with Seattle.
Seattle is like a yo-yo. They're hot and cold, and they get hot at the right times, but I don't know. I just feel like I think they're due. I just want to say they're due at some point. And so
Yeah.
I'm
They
guessing
remind
it's
me
going to
of
be
the
this season.
Galaxy teams during the Donovan Keane, Beckham
Mm-hmm.
era, or also known as the anti-FC Dallases, where once it's summer, they start to lean forward like they're playing a video game and start taking it seriously.
Yeah. Uh-huh. Yeah, they kind of kick back, and then all of a sudden, when it's time to ramp up, then they start really focusing.
Any thoughts on what Austin will bring to this league? Because unlike Miami and Nashville, for
Quakes.
example, Austin
Yeah.
they don't have any other professional sports teams. This is the only professional sports team of the major 5 leagues, so to speak, in Austin. The others in
Yeah.
Texas, they all belong either in the Houston or Dallas area besides San Antonio Spurs. So do you think
Mm-hmm.
that will kind of create another very passionate MLS fan base?
I do, just because MLS is growing. I think
Mhm.
soccer is booming, especially with the prospect of the United States hosting the World Cup in another 2026, so another 5 years or so. So Atlanta's a huge fan base. I think that whole kind of I don't want to call it the
Sunbelt?
Bible Belt, but yeah, Sunbelt.
Sunbelt.
Yeah, they Dallas has a really strong presence. Houston, they're not, the Orange Crush not so much, but I think
Texas has definitely a strong presence because I'm looking at the U.S. Open Cup teams for 2021.
Mm-hmm.
So California has the most teams in that competition with 17, ranging from FC Davis and Chula Vista FC to Ventura County Fusion. And then
Mm-hmm.
the next highest is Texas with 11. And this includes all the major parts like Austin, even like El Paso, Fort Worth, and so on and so forth.
Yeah.
So Texas is definitely a very hotbed of soccer. And I think while there's still parts of the U.S. like a Phoenix, a Detroit, or even a Vegas maybe that
Mm-hmm.
that state doesn't have any MLS teams. Texas is the second largest state in the country, so I think
Yeah.
Austin FC, they've made some intriguing signings. I think that it's going to be interesting to see what they do. I don't think that they're going to be a team that you can just put in coins into a 3-point vending machine. Oh, here's your 3 points, and then walk away. It's going to be tough, but we'll see.
Well, they got Danny Houston and they got Nick Lima from us, and those
Right.
are respectable players. I'm looking forward to watching what Nick Lima does this year.
Mm-hmm.
I think he's going to have probably 5 or 6 goals this season. I think he's going to be tasked to be more of a winger than a defender. So, and obviously we all want Nick Lima to do well. So, looking forward, and I love that we're going to be playing Austin as our kickoff match. So,
yeah, we're going to be a part of history. So it's going to be their first ever match in MLS, and hopefully history will be on our side because sometimes firsts can be a good result for the San Jose Earthquakes, like when they played in the first ever MLS game.
Yeah. Yep.
Any other thoughts on any other teams in MLS before I ask you for your MLS Cup matchup? If you had to pick 2 teams today.
Okay. MLS Cup.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, geez.
While you're thinking of that, do you have any other straight thoughts on any other club before you get to that?
I think a club that that's a good question. I think Chicago Fire.
Chicago Fire.
Yeah, I think I think they might be a team to watch this year. They've been mediocre for a while now, and I want to say watch out for Chicago Fire. I think
if I just keep poking them with a stick, asking them to do something, and maybe they'll finally do something. We'll see. Chicago Fire did something last year. They beat Seattle Sounders in MLS's back tournament. We started thinking, maybe there's something there, and then kind of became a nothing burger at the end. But I think Chicago Fire, they're trying. They don't want to be stuck in the same place they've been in a while. They're trying to end that cycle of just being irrelevant, I guess.
Yeah.
Which is shocking because when you think of Chicago sports, they're always in the conversation. So you expect a little bit more of that in MLS. I don't know what's going on in Montreal though. Montreal, they have an identity crisis.
Yeah, I'd love to know what's going on there. I saw Thierry Henry is leaving,
right?
Or he left basically. So
yeah, and I just want, while we're covering some of the Eastern Conference team, shout out to Soccer Crush podcast, our friends over there, Trisha, Abby, and Beth. They seem as pessimistic as ever about FC Cincinnati's chances, but they have solace in the fact that they have a better jersey than Nashville. And apparently there's a Cincinnati-Nashville rivalry that comes from the lower divisions of U.S. soccer, so that was interesting. There's so much talk about jerseys lately. Did you have an opinion one way or another about any of them?
I might get crap for this, but the striped Galaxy jersey that they just came out with, I thought that was actually a really, really cool design, and I'd like to see.
I hate to admit it, but you might be right.
Yeah, I was looking at that. Plus, I don't know if you've seen the Japan national team jerseys where it's the digital camo.
Oh, I have not. I gotta check that out.
I think the Quake should really look into this. The Japanese national team, they got digital camo. It's it's black and blue and with a little bit of white and things like that, and it's got like a couple shades of blue, which would be perfect for the Quake. So
Favi lives in Japan now, so maybe he can cop one of them and ship one to the San Jose Earthquakes for some research.
Yeah, do a little bit of research. I think.
So I'll give you my MLS Cup pick. If I had to pick right now, I'd say it could be Portland Timbers versus, and I say that now, but like I'm blanking on the East team, but I'm going to say Portland Timbers versus
Orlando.
I thought about that, but I feel like what are the odds that that's going to happen just like it did in MLS's back tournament? Yeah. I think Portland Timbers versus Toronto. I think we've seen a lot of Seattle versus Toronto, so it would be interesting to see Toronto take on the other like major half of the Cascadia rivalry. No offense to Vancouver, but I think I think Alejandro Pozuelo. We're talking about Christian Espinoza racking up the assists. I think Pozuelo might beat him to that assist chart victory if he has another great season like we know he's capable of. And Portland Timbers, they seem to have so many options across the board. I think that they're built for this type of season where there's going to be a lot of games that get moved around and stuff, but they'll have the players to swap out in case, someone gets suspended, someone gets hurt. What do you think?
I don't want to pick Portland to win it just because I don't like Portland. I would definitely see them finishing they're definitely a playoff team.
So when Portland plays Seattle, do you say I guess Seattle's the lesser of two evils?
I root for a tie in that one, I guess.
Yeah, there we go. That's more like it for me because I feel like Seattle is kind of like the LA Galaxy of the Pacific Northwest. So since we're rivals with LA Galaxy, we can't totally be friends with Seattle in my eyes, but all the Facebook groups and stuff I'm in, there's always a lot of Seattle and Portland fans, and they're good people, so I can't hate them as much as I want to. And also I've been to Portland recently, I've been to Seattle recently, and they feel so much like San Francisco, Oakland, San Jose. So they're great towns.
I'm gonna stick by my Minnesota prediction.
It could happen. They were so close to it last time.
I just think they're I want to say this is the year they put it together. They got all the pieces, the puzzle's coming, it's forming, and I think this is going to be the year. I think they're going to have more of a Columbus Crew type of run, where they're going to be near the top, but they're going to have a good run at the right time. And I don't want to pick Crew again because
that's the obvious choice.
Yeah, that's the obvious choice. I'm gonna go.
You want to go super crazy, maybe like a Nashville or something?
Oh, that'd be great. Yeah, does Nashville even make the playoffs or?
They did pretty well when they did get there, and then New England had the big surge where they knocked out a few teams.
Yeah. Can I predict like an NYC Philly? Of course.
They left Brendan Aronson and Mark McKenzie, so I think that might be tough.
Yeah. Okay. Okay. Does Atlanta get it together this year, or are they just on the free fall still?
Sure, for the heck of it, because we're kind of running out of time. You want to stick with Minnesota versus Atlanta?
No, I'm gonna go Minnesota and Orlando.
Minnesota and Orlando. Okay.
Two kind of dark horse teams. Yeah.
The Adrian Heath Cup.
Yes, exactly. Yeah.
There we go. Yeah, I think it could happen. I think those are teams that are trending in the right direction.
When you got a team that's kind of trending upwards, I think that's.
If San Jose Earthquakes can't win the MLS Cup, as a Manchester United fan, a scenario where either Ike Opara or Nani wins it, then that's fine with me.
Yeah, I'll take it. Yeah.
All right. Yeah. Once again, I want to thank you, Dan, for your time here. Where can fans of the Tectonic Takes podcast follow you or keep up with your work?
All right. So Instagram, I post mostly U.S. or soccer. Quake Soccer, U.S. women's, men's national team pictures. Quakes fan, both Instagram and Twitter, and also quakesfan.com is my blog, which I'll be working on throughout the season. So,
all right, sounds good. And I also want to thank one last time our sponsors for this podcast and sponsors of the Beautiful Game Network who host our podcast and allow us to have these great conversations. Roughneck Scarves, official scarf supplier of MLS, USL, and US Soccer. Get custom scarves for your group or team at roughneckscarves.com. And if you're tired of the same old uniforms and cookie-cutter templates from Nike and Adidas, you can get a unique, completely custom kit for your youth club, Sunday League squad, adult, pro team, or Chinese checkers tournament. Icarus FC can help you create the kit of your dreams at an affordable price. Let them help you design your new custom kit today at icarusfc.com. And with that, that's all the time we have for today. And I'm even more than before looking forward to the MLS season. I know I said this to everyone I talk to, but that's just how it is with San Jose Earthquakes fans. It's always a pleasure.
Yeah. And I'm looking forward to the Olympics too.
The Olympics will be great too.
I think
men's and women.
Yeah, men's and women's, but I especially am looking forward to seeing our U23 squad go out there and showing the world that we got a really, really good group of young core players. And I think we're going to be turning heads pretty soon. So
yeah, exactly. I think it's a great opportunity for the USA and for San Jose Quakes players alike, and there's a lot to look forward to. So that being said, go Quakes.
Go Quakes. Predicted this.